what I'm doing here, you're asking, I'm here at the GreenHill Center for North Carolina Art, which I think is the full name of this place, or GreenHill as it's known. And I've been commissioned to create a new site-specific installation. And so that's just a fancy way of saying I'm using the gallery as a studio to build a monumental body of work. So a large component of what I will be doing, you're here on the second day. This is the second day I've got started, but a large component of what I'll use will be, these are wooden coffee stir sticks. These are just the standard 7-inch, 7.5-inch ones you'll find at your local coffee shop. These are coffee cup sleeves. These are braided aluminum cable. There'll also be other elements from the coffee shop in here, like coffee grounds and lids, and there's some there'll be some examples of additions and works on paper that I've made, but all the materials that create that work come from and are circulating around the to-go coffee cup, in particular the things you would touch, like a stick, a sleeve, the lid. So as a viewer, you will have touched and experienced all of these materials.
So where'd you come up with the idea for this?
Initially, it was an identity crisis. About 2005, 2006, I really wanted to be a British artist. I really wanted to be that image of the British earth artist. And there's some American artists in the 60s and 70s, but it was really these British artists that did things with materials through hand process and arrangement and accumulation, but they would go out into their natural environment. And so in looking at the British method, I somehow boiled it down to like, well, I guess the coffee shop's my natural environment. I'll take everything I can from there. I did literally liberate all the materials I could, but then I'll build the same sort of sculptures and works that I was making before, but out of coffee shop materials.
Why coffee shop materials? Where'd that come from?
It really was genuinely when I thought like a British artist, it seemed more sincere and true to my life, instead of making a specialized trip to the woods. Well, the place where I go, where I see materials that I touch, that connect me and ground me. And it wasn't cynical or ironic at first. It was pretty genuine. It was a place I went to make drawings. You can tell how long ago this was. There wasn't a laptop farm then. This goes back to 2000, 2001. The coffee shop was a studio. It was a place I went to make drawings. And so when I sat down with my drawings and my ideas about sculpture and what I wanted to make, it just made sense that like, okay, I want to be a British artist. I'll switch. This will make sense. And then now, 10 years later, the body of work just sort of exists as these large site-specific works. That's more the origin story. Let's put it in contemporary terms. But today it's now just a means to an end. I can work very quickly and at a very large scale with these materials. And when a place commissions me to build a piece, I can just order these. We get these directly from the manufacturers.
What kind of stuff were you doing before this?
Large sculpture, but not room-sized, and so a lot of stuff with found metal. I was doing some of the objects that predate this. It's sort of funny, it sort of folds back, but there are earlier objects I used to make where I would take wet wood, branches and other pieces of wood with wet or steam, bend them into forms at a smaller scale, but similar to these linear pieces, and then weave just wire and do woven wire. So always interested in hand process and structure and form, and just sort of there's the classic problem of make a sculpture that is self-supporting, doesn't rely on a pedestal, is just an object. And so I made a lot of sort of abstract baskets, for lack of a better word, but they were really meant to be sculptures. And so shifting that imagery, changing the scale, and then the big factor is removing the existence of a studio. So I only make work in the place where it's exhibited. So you bring me in, this becomes the studio, the site of production. All this work is built here in the gallery.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And what is like sort of your inspirations for this?
Well, the source was wanting to be a British artist. In the course of doing the projects, the work kind of starts to feed the work. So in a very specific way, this piece right here is kind of picking up where I left off with the last piece I did in January. And so the show I did in January, I was making this form, the sort of linear form that moved through a wall, as it were. And so this time I want to try and make, which I'm just at the beginning of, the appearance of two of these woven linear forms passing through each other. But that's to say, if you can we plug go to a website. My website functions more as an archive. You can sort of see if you look back at each subsequent installation, I'm kind of just building off to the same piece. So that's, what's it? Chuck Close is credited with saying this: inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and work. So that's Chuck Close. That's not.
And I noticed you were listening to music earlier. What kind of music do you like to listen to while you're doing this?
Actually, it's funny. No music at all. I like podcasts, which I guess is the public access of radio. A lot of talk radio. For a few years, I was very reductive. I would just want complete silence. But now, it's more like an athlete training for a race. There's a thing called a conversational pace. When you're running, you're supposed to still be able to talk. So something about just listening to voices talking keeps me focused on work, because it's just the labor. But if music gets annoying, gets on my nerves, I would want to actively listen to the music. So listening to a podcast, it makes me shut up, so I just work. I don't know. That's it. There you go. That's the glowing endorsement of podcast. Quiet the voices in your head with the voices of others. So.
That's amazing. Now, this obviously has taken you at least a day, 2 days.
I'll be here working for about 2 days, but there's a couple unique features for the project here at GreenHill. Traditionally, I'm flown in somewhere pretty far flung, or I'm just showing up, but I happen to live in Raleigh, so for this one I'm able to drive back and forth. I'm sleeping in my own bed, which is unusual. Usually I am literally somewhere in residence in that city. So I was able to, ahead of this, sort of pre-assemble and get some stuff going, and I've got the convenience of being able to drive back, well, it's not convenient, it's still 75 miles, super commuting from Raleigh to here. But there'll be about 10 work days total, and so like I say, this is just the second day, just sort of laying things in. There's more to come, but by next Thursday or Friday, we should be cleaning up and taking pictures.
So about how long are the days that you spend here?
Actually, these will be short days by my standards. I'm really only going to be here about 8 or 9 hours a day. But traditionally, I'll go somewhere, they'll bring me somewhere, and I can put in like 12 or 14-hour days. But like I say, I'm just commuting in from home. So I'm really only going to get about 9 hours, because I have to, it takes an hour. It takes about an hour and 20 to get here from my house. So I get here at 8, and then I'll leave around 4:35, 5. And then drive back home for an hour and 20 minutes, and turn around and come back. But just for these couple days.
This is a lot of sticks. About how many sticks do you think this will take? Or coffee stirrers, I should say.
There's sticks. It's funny, I don't actually count them. I just know it's sort of based on the cases. So each one of those brown boxes, the big boxes, is about 10,000. And so in total, there'll probably be about 7 boxes, so that's 70,000. But I break a lot don't make the final thing. So oftentimes we'll just put a number, because people are always curious, on the label that says, 70,000. But that just means 7 cases were consumed for it. And the same with these, with the coffee cup sleeves. There's 6 cases of coffee cup sleeves, which is maybe about 765. These cases, the sleeves, I think it's 1,300 sleeves in a case. So 6,000, 7,800. But again, a lot of them I tear, a lot of them I don't use. So maybe there's 6,500 coffee cup sleeves. But it's less about a numbers game. It's more about logistically. I just know how much I need to make the piece I want to make. Like I said, where initially the idea would have been to kind of inhabit this character of a British landscape artist, in the course of the last decade, I guess, I've sort of become, that guy who makes those things out of that stuff. Which is not to say it's still very important that the materials are not art materials. They're something taken out of everyday life and they're pulled out of circulation. And then also that the reason no glue or anything is used is so that it's just through strict arrangement and labor. There's no actual alteration of the materials. Everything can be undone after the fact.
So is it ever sort of like frustrating that it comes up and then in like a month or a couple months it comes back and you have to take it back down maybe?
Well, I'm not usually there for the takedown. And
Okay.
since the venues, each venue, if they want one of these, they're essentially purchasing the materials to have the work created. So for me, it's actually the most freeing way to work. I just have to make the work and document it and then move on. And so it's sort of, especially because you delete the problem of having a studio, this is the place where I make the work, this is where it's exhibited, and ultimately where it's destroyed. It kind of closes the loop. It takes that burden off of the artist and makes, an exhibition venue, or rather the whole process of exhibiting is folded into the work. So you're literally, seeing the newest thing that I will have made as fast as I'll see it. So no, it's the opposite of frustrating. It's
Okay.
incredibly freeing. But yeah, no, I think because we're used to a more traditional model that someone toils away in secret in a studio and then transports it to a special place. But instead, this is the special place. It's being made here and then it's done. So the only cleanup is I gotta sweep up the floor when I'm done.
On something like this, like how do you know where to start, or do you just pick a spot and go?
That's a funny question. The way I always answer that question is I sort of start with the floor plan of the gallery. So I know the overall gesture or effect of the show that I want for the completed show, and then it's just sort of like hiring myself to execute that. So there's not like it's not like, oh, I've got to start in this place and get to that place. There's an overall finished effect. So in the case of this show, I started with assembling the sleeves, tensioning them in the air, and then I knew that the most difficult, time-consuming thing would be making this crisscross where these two forms appear to meet. So I just need to get that out of the way so I can move on and build the rest of the structure. That was the only logistic consideration, but I could have just easily started in a different. Where I start and stop doesn't matter. It's not like crochet. There's not one leading edge. I could be working on all edges of this, putting stuff on the walls, doing other things.